Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Karen Seymour Ellis, and I serve as a trustee here at Dupage Unitarian Universalist Church. We want to welcome everyone to our open and inclusive virtual community this morning. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and we pledge to support one another as we walk those paths. We are so glad you were able to find us and join us for our live stream service today. Please check the church website at dupageUUchurch.org for updates. If you search under Dupage UU Church on Facebook, you will find other ways to be in community as well. I have one additional announcement this morning. Save the date for Dupage UU Church's 2020 annual auction. This year's theme, Star Trek. November 7th, online all day, from the comfort of your own home. Highly illogical? Well, maybe. But Dupage UU Church will make every attempt to live long and prosper. Begin thinking creatively about remote events, food, and services you can offer. Think creatively about those items you will purchase. Stay tuned. Ideas, details, and much more to come.
Morning. Here, in the heart of human companionship, we find the holy. We do not speak of God, we speak of you. We speak of us all. Here, in the heart of this company, we seek to know each other and to learn of our world and its ways. Here, in the heart of life and love, we gather, even virtually, and celebrate together again. And for this, we light our flaming chalice this morning. May it ever be so. Wherever you are and however you're being with us today, we invite you to join your voices in song. Our opening hymn is We Laugh, We Cry. It's number 354 in the gray hymnal, and we're singing verses 1 and 4.
We need to feel there's something here.
invite you to join us speaking the words of our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
It is time to gather. And today I have a story about Charles Darwin. And it's a story that you don't usually hear about. It's about his childhood. So from the time he was a little boy, Charles Darwin was an explorer. He loved to roam the fields and hills near his home in Shrewsbury, England. He was fascinated by the movements of small animals and insects and knew each wildflower by name. He was curious about everything, everything that he saw and heard and touched, wondering at the lives of ants and butterflies, examining and collecting rocks, delighting in the grasses, trees, leaves, and flowers that provided homes for his very favorite creature, the beetle. Curiosity about the world and the place of humans in it was a gift given to Charles by both his grandfathers. They were Unitarians and believed that human beings did not yet know all the answers to life's great questions. The clues were to be found in observing the world around them. When Charles was 8, his mother died. Not long after, his father decided to send Charles away to school, where he might learn the things that young gentlemen in his day were expected to know: Greek, Latin, and ancient history. But Charles was more interested in the workings of an anthill or the mysteries found in a rock pile than he was in what was taught at school. At every opportunity, he took long walks outdoors, watching, listening, and collecting. He delighted in figuring out how creatures behaved and how the natural world worked. This wasn't at all what Charles' father had in mind, and he was worried. What would young Charles do when he grew up? What kind of man would he be? When Charles was 15, his father sent him to medical school to become a doctor like his father and grandfather. But he was not interested in medicine. Instead, he found people who would teach him all about different kinds of plants. He began to draw these plants in great detail, labeling all the parts, learning to tell one variety from another. 2 years later, Charles left medical school, and it was clear that he didn't want to be a doctor. His father was furious and thought the endless hours Charles spent outdoors was a waste of time. Determined that Charles would make something of himself, his father sent him to Cambridge University to become a minister. Charles was not unhappy with that decision, and in those days, ministers often did science experiments and observations in their spare time. Spare time? Okay. In his spare time, Charles planned to find a small church in the countryside and spend most of his time observing and drawing plants, animals, rocks, and insects. He was still very interested in collecting beetles. And one day, Charles tore a piece of bark off of a tree and saw 2 rare kinds of beetles. And he had one in each hand when he saw a third that he wanted to add to his collection. He quickly popped one beetle into his mouth in order to grab the third, with very bad results. The beetle squirted something nasty tasting, and Charles was forced to spit it out. At Cambridge, Charles discovered what his life's work would be and began to call himself a naturalist. When he was 19, he was invited to spend 5 years traveling around the world on the HMS Beagle, serving as its naturalist. His job was to draw and make notes on plants, animals, and rock formations everywhere the ship went. With some strong support from his uncle Hosea, Charles was eventually able to convince his father that this proposed journey was a good idea. And on December 27, 1831, he left on a 5-year voyage that would change his understanding of the world. And on that trip, he began to piece together clues to the great puzzle then called the mystery of mysteries, how all the different forms of life on earth came to be. As he traveled, Charles filled notebooks with drawings and notes, and he stayed open to the curiosities of the natural world as they presented themselves: frogs, salamanders, armadillos, insects, and lots of fossils. When he returned to England 5 years later, he understood how plants and animals evolved from one form to another over the course of many, many thousands and millions of years. 22 years later, Charles finally published The Origin of Species. Scientists, preachers, and teachers took notice, and so did the press. The boy collector, with the gift of wonder, a spirit of adventure, and the openness to new ideas, had become the scientist whose theory responded to the mystery of mysteries. And today, people still take notice and debate what Charles Darwin had to say.
Over the last month, Rev Mike has been preaching in response to the book, Religious Integrity for Everyone, Functional Theology for Secular Society, by his colleague in UU ministry, the Reverend Fred Campbell. Today he will present the fourth and final installment of his series about the four faiths or four spiritualities, which are naturalism, theism, mysticism, and humanism. These four faiths or spiritualities, which are building blocks for bigger concepts in theology, were first identified by Campbell. Regarding humanism, he wrote, "Humanists draw the meaning of living from within our human community. They believe that all knowledge and values come from this source. They tend to be city folk. They know we get food, energy, shelter, and clothing from our interaction with the world. But these facts are of secondary importance. Most humanists tend to believe that human death is the end of human life, although some humanists believe in life after death and reincarnation. Humanists believe in evolution and understand human living as a genetic link in this transcendent process. Humanists seek control of things and events. Living in a city tends to lead them to think they are in control, flipping a switch for heat or cool air. Grocery stores provide whatever they want in the way of food. They tend to understand change as a sequence of cause and effect with a little luck or serendipity happening every now and again. Humanists are concerned about making this world a better place to live in and act as if the value of life comes from what they do today. Many humanists are deeply concerned with issues of justice and injustice in human society and have great confidence in themselves and other human beings to make this world a better place for all living organisms. When asked what the primary source of their values for governing living is, the human community is the answer they give.
Thank you, Chuck. When we have our joys and sorrows during our services, it gives us a time to check in and see how are we all doing. And most of you are viewing this from home, and I can't hear from you, but I still wonder, how are you all doing? Although we don't broadcast our joys and sorrows in this virtual format, I do want to take a few moments to contemplate all of the joys and sorrows that you may know of that are happening in our church community or elsewhere. And during this time, we'll hear a little bit of Mendelssohn. Thank you, Vera. I began this series of sermons sharing how I feel that I've incorporated elements of each of the four spiritualities, naturalism, theism, mysticism, and humanism, into my own worldview. I describe the four as facets of the same jewel, which is a Buddhist metaphor that I've adopted because it feels appropriate. The idea is that when you peer through different facets, light is reflected in different ways, so you see the world differently through each facet. A neat metaphor. When peering through the humanist facet of the jewel, we may see our human community gathered in faith. And in this case, by faith, I mean faith in humanity and its own innate sense of what in our lives is right and good, and that we collectively act on this sense of right and good with others in the human community. This is a faith that centers responsibility for protecting life, for advancing humanity, and for meeting our personal needs through our human faculties rather than through the intervention of a supernatural force or God. Some humanists, like me, may be religious, while others are secular and atheist. In both cases, the primary component of faith is a faith in humanity. Furthermore, science as a field of knowledge very pertinent to our lives and evolution should be considered a fact, not a fancy. When I think of how science affects my own faith, especially faith in humanity, I'm personally struck by advances in medicine based on discoveries by wise and knowledgeable humans whose collective efforts have saved or extended the lives of millions. It's important to remember this, especially now in the midst of a pandemic. Before we get into the heart of humanism, let's consider the history and evolution of humanist ideals. The term humanism is applied to several movements in history, and it should be pointed out that the early and even later Renaissance philosophies that were called humanism have little in common with modern rationalist humanism as it is now understood. Renaissance humanism in particular was deeply influenced by Neoplatonism and Hermeticism, which is a philosophy of magic and mysticism. It can be said, however, that from these philosophies rose empirical methodology and eventually led to the scientific method. But the often secular and always rationalist philosophy of modern humanism, of which most here will be familiar, really begins with the Humanist Manifesto. The first version was written by members of the American Humanist Association and approved and signed by 34 humanists in Chicago in 1933. Among the signatories were many Unitarians. At that time, they were describing humanism as a new religion, with the intent that this new religion would replace religions with a supernatural focus or were based on non-empirical revelations. We should also note that modern humanist philosophy is quite concerned with ethics as a human construct by which we make our lives and the lives of those around us good. The Humanist Manifesto has been revised twice and has commented on many issues of justice affecting humanity as well as religious issues. For example, the manifestos have spoken against war and weapons of mass destruction, racism, and an over-reliance on profit-making enterprises. They've also spoken in favor of human rights, including feminist causes such as equality, as well as issues we might take for granted now, like the right to divorce or to access family planning resources and birth control. If you keep on current events, you may feel, as I do, that perhaps we should not take these things for granted. But I digress. The most recent version of this manifesto is Humanism and Its Aspirations, the Humanist Manifesto 3, which was published in 2003. Over the course of this sermon, I'll share much of it with you. It seems quite secular and perhaps even non-religious, as it focuses on 7 points, which state that knowledge of the world is derived by observation, experimentation, and rational analysis. Humans are an integral part of nature, the result of evolutionary change and unguided process. Ethical values are derived from human need and interest as tested by experience. Life's fulfillment emerges from individual participation in the service of humane ideals. Humans are social by nature and find meaning in relationships, and working to benefit society maximizes individual happiness. And finally, respect for differing yet humane views in an open, secular, democratic, and sustainable society. The document outlines reasons for human ethics beyond the framework suggested in the book of Genesis or any other scripture. It begins with these words: Humanism is a progressive philosophy of life that, without supernaturalism, is that me? Sorry about that. Okay, can we? Yep. I'm not sure what happened to my headset. Okay, sorry about that. The life stance of humanism, guided by reason, inspired by compassion, and informed by experience, encourages us to live life well and fully. It evolved through the ages and continues to develop through the efforts of thoughtful people who recognize that values and ideals, however carefully wrought, are subject to change as our knowledge and understandings advance. To be continued. Today we are returning to our former custom of collecting a special collection for some worthy nonprofit. Before the COVID pandemic, it had been our custom to support worthy nonprofit organizations in our community with a monthly special collection. The Literacy Dupage organization was our recipient the week we realized we had to shut down our church building. I had to contact the representatives and ask them not to come to church that day after all. After much discussion, our community outreach committee and our finance folks have developed a system to do special collections in our virtual environment. So we begin again, where we left off, with a few words now from the Literacy Dupage organization. I encourage you to give generously. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cassandra Shepard, and I'm the marketing manager at Literacy Dupage. First, on behalf of the entire Literacy Dupage family, thank you Dupage Unitarian Universalist Church for allowing us the opportunity to speak with you today. Literacy Dupage is a nonprofit organization based in Dupage County, Illinois. We recruit and train volunteer tutors to teach adults who want to improve their English language skills. Since 1972, we've been equipping a big-hearted army of volunteer tutors to sit side by side with adults in Dupage County to work on their English language, listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. Our core service is our one-on-one tutoring program, but we also offer small group and classroom-based tutoring along with English conversation groups. Prior to COVID, we had 8 conversation groups which would meet regularly throughout Dupage County. Our largest program, our one-on-one tutoring program, annually serves over 500 adult learners from over 30 different communities in Dupage County. We do this through our incredible army of over 450 volunteer tutors. That said, our community's language gap may surprise you. More than 100,000 Dupage County residents have identified themselves as speaking English less than well. So you can see that while we help over 500 learners annually, we're really only covering a small portion of the need that exists in Dupage County. We dream of matching every Dupage County adult who needs help improving their English skills with a Literacy Dupage tutor. Our one-on-one tutoring program is unique. We provide volunteer tutors with the techniques and confidence they need to help adults shatter language barriers and experience a whole new world of communication and connection. After tutors attend an orientation session where they get to know us, they then go through 15 hours of new tutor training. While in training, they are matched with their adult learner. Prior to COVID, the learner and the tutor would decide on a mutually convenient time and location to meet, which was almost always at a local library. Currently, many tutors and learners are meeting virtually. The instruction in the one-on-one tutoring program is entirely customized. The learner chooses specific goals they would like to work on, such as reading a bedtime story, passing the citizenship exam, applying for a job, or deciphering prescription labels. The tutor understands the goals the learner is trying to achieve and then offers practical life skills instruction to help the learner achieve these goals. This highly personalized approach produces results, builds relationships, and strengthens families and communities. Like the rest of the world, with the onset of COVID, our entire tutoring program changed. We have had to move to a completely online platform, and while we do hope to resume in-person activities, we are trying to create a robust online tutoring program. Any way that you can help is immensely appreciated. Your involvement may be making a donation, becoming a volunteer tutor, referring a learner to our program, or volunteering in a non-tutoring capacity, such as video editing or putting up flyers. However you give, in big and small ways, you are helping us change lives through literacy, so thank you. To learn more about Literacy Dupage and how you can become involved, I encourage you to check out our website, which is www.literacydupage.org. The rest of this short video is part of our tutor recruitment series, where you will hear from tutors and learners in our program. Thank you again for letting us speak with you today. We hope that you will join us either now or in the future.
Literacy Dupage is a community-based nonprofit formed in 1972. Our mission: to provide accessible and customized tutoring to adults in Dupage County and help them in English with their reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills.
It's much more than just I know how to speak English so I can teach English. Tutors have empathy, there's a degree of compassion. To work with adults is really special.
Volunteer for Literacy Dupage today and become a tutor.
few moments ago, just to be sure sound knows, I'm back on the headset, right? Yep, okay. A few moments ago, I introduced the 7 points from the Humanist Manifesto 3. In the first point, they state that knowledge of the world is derived by observation, experimentation, and rational analysis. Humanists find that science is the best method for determining this knowledge, as well as for solving problems and developing beneficial technologies. We also recognize the value of new departures in thought, the arts, and the inner experience, each subject to analysis. This is the primary tenet of humanism and is related to the scientific method mentioned earlier. That is, our understanding of the world should be rooted in our powers of observation and logical reasoning, and should not be colored by magical thinking or based upon unprovable suppositions or revelations. We base rational observation upon the human senses as known to science. If there are other ways of knowing than those known to science now, these ways of knowing must be critically examined and logically considered prior to accepting any information from that source. For example, for ages, some humans trusted only what they could see with their own eyes. In modern times, we have learned about magnetism, for example, creating a new way of seeing, such as with magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI. The manifesto then turns to our place in the natural order of all things. They posit that humans are an integral part of nature, the result of unguided evolutionary change. Humanists recognize nature as self-existing. We accept our life as all and enough, distinguishing things as they are from things as we might wish or imagine them to be. We welcome the challenges of the future and are drawn to and undaunted by the yet-to-be known. Humanists do not place humanity at the center of existence, but as one part of all. We celebrate our part in the cosmos and recognize that our lives, are part of the natural order, but do not extend beyond the natural order or our natural lifespans. The manifesto implies that there is no life after death and that no amount of wishing or praying will make something occur. Regarding ethics and values and how we should act upon them, the manifesto says ethical values are derived from human need and interest as tested by experience. So I think humanists ground values in human welfare, shaped by human circumstances, interests, and concerns. We're committed to treating each person as having inherent worth and dignity, and to making informed choices in a context of freedom consonant with responsibility. I suspect it's not an accident that the first UU principle, respect for the inherent worth and dignity of all people, found its way into the Humanist Manifesto. If the human experience is the heart of humanism, we can logically extend that thought to include the idea that we should work to make human experience good for all. Which leads to the next point in the manifesto, which states that being humane is also obviously part of the humanist ideal. Life's fulfillment emerges from individual participation in the service of humane ideals, they wrote. We aim for our fullest possible development, and we animate our lives with a deep sense of purpose, finding wonder and awe in the joys and beauties of human existence, its challenges and its tragedies, and even in the inevitability and finality of death. Humanists rely on the rich heritage of human culture and the life stance of humanism to provide comfort in times of want and encouragement in times of plenty. It's important that we are there for each other, not least because the secular side of humanism posits that there is no other force in the universe that will be there for us, only our fellow humans. Furthermore, it suggests it's something that I might call the human imperative, to develop oneself to the point of self-actualization, the full realization of one's talents and abilities. In other words, we should not sit on our laurels, but rather be lifelong learners. The manifesto continues with the theme of community and our relationships with others. Humans are social by nature and find meaning in relationships. Humanists long for and strive toward a world of mutual care and concern, free of cruelty and its consequences, where differences are resolved cooperatively without resorting to violence. I think we have work to do in all of those areas. The joining of individuality with interdependence enriches our lives, encourages us to enrich the lives of others, and inspires peace, justice, and opportunity for all. Part of our collective work is to develop a just and equitable society, and that by definition that must apply to all people, regardless of race, class, or other attributes. While we work to improve our own lives, being interdependent, we also help improve the lives of those with whom we are in relationship. The Humanist Ideal describes how we might achieve such lofty goals. Working to benefit society maximizes individual happiness. Progressive cultures have worked to free humanity from the brutalities of mere survival and to reduce suffering, improve society, and develop global community. We seek to minimize the inequities of circumstance and ability, and we support a just distribution of nature's resources and the fruits of human effort so that as many as possible can enjoy a good life. This names progressive culture, although it actually goes further and describes an unnamed socialist culture. It seems socialism has become a boogeyman in America, which is too bad, since the intention is the improvement and equalization of society and provides for equitable sharing and use of resources. Capitalists and conservatives think that's a bad thing, but I do not. Finally, the seventh and last point of the manifesto addresses our civil rights and responsibilities. They wrote that humanists are concerned for the well-being of all and committed to diversity and respect for those of differing yet humane views. We work to uphold the equal enjoyment of human rights and civil liberties in an open, secular society and maintain it is a civic duty to participate in the democratic process and to protect nature's integrity, diversity, and beauty in a sustainable manner. I appreciate the fact that the manifesto addresses diversity and divergent viewpoints, but also describes our duties to society and the world, including democracy and sustainability. In fact, about that last point, it seems humanity comes to naught without our home world. We must protect the earth because we truly rely on it for our lives. I called this sermon The Heart of Humanism because humanism is an ethical movement that focuses on helping humanity, helping each other. Yes, as a rationalist movement, it may seem a bit heady, but as an ethical movement, it is also heartfelt. As noted in the manifesto, we are guided by reason, inspired by compassion. May it ever be so, and blessed be you all. Our closing hymn is 318 in the gray hymnal, We Would Be One. I invite you to join your voices in song from wherever you are.
Oh
As we walk through this life, we are guided by reason, inspired by compassion, looking to help one another along the way. Look around you, here in the sanctuary or in your living room. Look at all of us gathered here in our mind's eye, at the natural world that surrounds us, at the abundance of life that sustains us. Let us be mindful of these as we go out and uphold our values for all. Spread joy, share love, and be alive. May it ever be so, and blessed be you all.